Welcome to Digital Imaging 2. Um, I'm going to assume that you are also in Digital Imaging 1 or you have taken Digital Imaging 1. And thusly, I'm not going to make this as elaborate as the other video. Please refer to the other video for most of the information. Should run generally the same. So not going to really cover any of this stuff. That's fine. Obviously, what you want to do is week 1. I'm just going to really quickly do the lecture part here, and then we will carry on, and then you can just do the work like you would do. Okay. So, what we're going to be doing in this one is Adobe InDesign. So, for the first 2 weeks in this course in Digital Imaging 2, we do Adobe InDesign, not Photoshop. The rest of the course will be Photoshop. We just do these random 2 weeks of InDesign. It's just a separate program, much like Photoshop. Okay, so it is different though. So Adobe Photoshop is made to create and adjust raster images, right? So pixel-based artwork, graphics. The InDesign is not made for that purpose. InDesign is actually made as it's an application for page layout, generally speaking. So meaning that you don't generally create artwork in there. You arrange artwork, and it's very good at handling specifically documents with a large number of pages. So think like magazines, posters, but magazines, books, ebooks, interactive media, things like that have multiple pages. Now, you can do single pages as well, but it's very good at working with text as well. You'll find that the text tools are more robust than, let's say, Photoshop. And generally, once you get the hang of it, easier to utilize as well. All right, so but the main thing to realize is that it's more of a layout program and less of a creation application. Okay, yeah. So that's InDesign. You're going to need to install it if you should already have Photoshop installed. You're going to need to install this application as well. You just go into Creative Cloud and install it. So you should already have Creative Cloud installed. So is it this one? Which one is it? That's OneDrive. This guy. You just go in here, go to graphic design, and you should see InDesign. You just go click install. Okay. Just go to the Creative Cloud. Again, just refer to the other video. You should know. All right. So in here, I'm just going to talk. I'm going to try and this lecture as quickly as possible and talk about basically about some page design elements. Okay, because your first assignment is going to be to create a magazine ad. So one of the primary things you need to understand is the rule of proximity. The idea is that things that are near each other, you assume association with each other. Meaning that if we were to look at this example on the right here, you see we have George Washington. Also, make sure you spell check. As you can see, I did not. If you look, you see that text there. You assume that this is a picture of George, right? I assume this is a picture of John Adams. I assume that this text here refers also to it. You automatically, when things are near each other, you assume association. You see two people walking next to each other, you assume that those people are in some way connected to each other, either romantically, platonically, whatever. You assume association. And the closer those things are, the more association, right? So if they're hugging, you're going to assume even more association, right? I always like to use the example of like someone holding a baby, right? If someone holds a baby like this, it's not their baby. But if they're holding a baby like this, it's their baby because they love the baby and they want to be more intimately involved. Closer, the more intimate. Okay, so even if we look at the example here, you're going to see this is more of an alignment idea, but you get the same point. You assume all of these are associated, but there's something different about these because these are offset. So you assume there's some sort of association with these elements versus these elements, okay? There's some nice articles in here as well that also deal with proximity. But just the idea is just that things that are near each other, you assume association. One of the big things that you have to do when you are designing things is deciding how to take information and make it as easily digestible for the audience as possible. Okay, so a lot of times what you got to do is you have to take the stuff and interconnect them in some way, and one of the ways to do that is through proximity. White space is sort of the opposite of proximity, right? So that's the space between elements. And one of the things that's super important is to utilize that. So it can have a lot of different meanings, but in a more literal sense, you can see this paragraph here is very easy to read. Once the white space between each of the letters tracking becomes larger, it gets harder to read because there's not as much association between the elements. If we look at this little area here, you'll see they all, we assume that there's an association between these two, these two, these two, and these two. However, this last one, there's something different about those because they have a little bit more white space. They stand out. One of the things that I'll often ask students is like, oh, how would I make something stand out? Let's say I have a paragraph and there's some text and images and graphics. How do I make like one word stand out? And they'll be like, make it bolder. Absolutely. Make it larger. Absolutely. Change the color. Yes. Right. Change the font. There's a lot of things you can do. To make something stand out more than anything else is to add white space around it. If you have a text and then just a bunch of space around it, that text will stand out more than if you had a bunch of text and you had red there, or that it was bigger, or that it was whatever. Because everything is in relationship to everything else. One of the things that you'll see, especially like in web design, and a lot of like magazine ads for that matter, is that they'll have something very important, what they call a call to action. So it's like a thing that they want you to click that button. That will be very much in the center, and there's a lot of space around it because they want to let it breathe. Some of my designs that I have to do, they don't have white space, and it bothers me. But that's what they want, so you do what they ask. But generally speaking, white space is a positive thing. Often people think that you have to fill every corner. So, for example, here, if we were doing, let's say, a business card, right? You might be tempted to fill every corner of the business card. But that's actually not very good because what ends up happening now is that when I look at this, I have to make multiple eye stops. So my eye has to look at multiple things. And in this case, I have to look at 5 different areas. I got to look at George Washington, right? The phone number, United States president, this, and then this. That's a lot of eye stops. It's now I have to look all over. And we're going to talk about it in a second here, visual hierarchy. We're also not directing the eye. The eye's just kind of going, right? You probably see United States president first. And then more than likely, you probably go up to the top left because we read at the top left down. But other than that, if we were in a different country, they might look at the top right or bottom left or bottom right so we don't have as much control. What would be better is to limit it. And again, use proximity, use white space, put the things that go together, right? So United States president, George Washington, right? Put those together because those two things go together. Then we put the contact information all together. It's a lot easier to read. There's only 2 eye stops. It breathes, right? It's a lot better. And even, it sounds stupid, but, if someone's holding this and it's a business card, if they have their thumb on this, they're going to cover one of these elements. But here, there's room for a thumb. So with a business card, it's not a bad idea to just even let it have breadth, right? Any design. One of the things that we try to do is control what we call a visual hierarchy. And the idea here is that we try to have a hierarchy, an order of importance. Okay, so meaning we want someone to see something first, then we want them to look at this element next, then this element, then this element, then this element. Normally in a page design, we want to have the heading, right, be the thing they see first, because that would be like, yeah, this is where I wanted to be. I want to find the list of U.S. presidents. Okay. Then the next thing, right, and this stands out the most because it's the largest font, right? It's bold. It also has an image. Next thing that probably stands out would either be these headings here or this bottom one. Again, this has color, right? It's bold. It's on the bottom. So first thing I look at is this. Second thing I look at is this. And then the third thing I'd probably look at would be Democratic, Republican, Federalist, Whig. Okay. Then I would look at the names. And that is better because think about it. If I'm trying to look for a specific president of their party affiliation, I could go here, but yep, that's close, right? Broad. Then a little more specific. Then, okay, well, I know I'm looking for Abraham Lincoln. It's going to be Republican. And then I go Abraham Lincoln, right? It makes it easier to find the elements if you have a hierarchy to them. That makes it easier to see. And again, it's about association, about space, more articles. One of the things you can also do to kind of create visual interest is utilize contrast. But when you utilize contrast, make sure that you are utilizing it. If you make it weak, it looks more like a mistake and it becomes more busy and actually harder to read, right? So if we have Barack Hussein Obama, right? I have these various things here. It's not very strong. Well, apparently there's an image. Not very strong. This is a little bit better, right? I make it a little bit bolder. I use a more fanciful font, we'll say, right? A more interesting font. I make the horizontal rules a little bit more interesting. I make this one thicker and this one thicker, and then these ones a little bit lighter. And then this one's even more so, right? I use even thicker one. And then I actually did I made the background black, right? And so there's more contrast in this one and not a lot in that one. This one's more visually interesting. Now you can do a thing where you utilize too much contrast, and then it becomes hard. Then it's not cohesive. There's no unity in it. I always like to use food as an example, right? So let's say I have Alfredo, right? If I just have Alfredo's good. I like Alfredo. But you throw a little broccoli, throw a little chicken in there, right? It's more interesting. There's other flavors now in there, right? Maybe crack a little black pepper on it. Yeah. But if I take that same thing of Alfredo and I throw some jelly beans on there and some lawn clippings, right? Yeah, totally is way more contrast than even the other one. But now it's so far that it's not cohesive anymore and it tastes awful. So it's kind of a balance of contrast, or variety versus unity or harmony. You're trying to find the balance between the two. If I make everything black and white, and everything is Arial font, it will all be cohesive, but it will be visually uninteresting. But if I use 20 different fonts in something and 10 different colors, it'll be a lot more variety, a lot more interesting, but it's going to be hard to digest and it's going to be hard to understand. So it's always that balance. All right, so now I want to talk about alignment. This is one of those things that you don't necessarily think about. A real common mistake that people will do, especially in like flyers and brochures and stuff, and even I do it to some extent, is they'll do center alignment. Generally speaking, center alignment is not as good as either using left alignment or right alignment. Earlier, I spoke about that if I have one element next to another element, I automatically assume an association, right? I assume that this picture is about, or this text is about this picture, okay? Get that. Makes sense. However, if I want to make these two elements even stronger aligned together, I could use this alignment. So notice that this one has left alignment, so there's a rag on this side, the torn edge. But this one I put left aligned, and then this one automatically has an alignment. Now these are more closely associated because they share this line. And the same thing can happen just when you have bodies of text, right? So if you look at this, here this is center aligned, but over here, by having, and I did terrible alignment, see how this is not even lined up? It loses association. But by having them share a right alignment, even though this is a separate element and this is a separate element, it helps guide your eye down, and it helps these two have two separate elements, two separate components, share a design aspect. So they're both sharing this, so you get an association between the two. If you look at my website in general, right, everything's got this left alignment going right down the line. It makes it easier, and it makes, even though this is a separate piece of text, it gives it more strength. It gives it more connection to the next piece, and it also makes it easier for the person to read and to be organized. So using left or right alignment is much preferred over using center alignment. You can try to use justified, but obviously then you end up with like really long spread out words. If it's something like this one, for instance, see how I use left right alignment on this side? I could try to do justified. There's a lot of text here, and it's little, so you could probably get away with doing justified just because there's so much of it. But if I try to do justified of this, which just means like you push it to the outside edges, there's going to be a big spread between these words in order to get from left to right. You're going to lose association within that line, so it doesn't work as well. So here's some more interesting. This is a video. Repetition. When possible, you want to try and repeat elements. So one of the things, it's a real obvious one, but when you do text, you usually want to limit to 2 or 3 typefaces. You usually have a heading typeface, which would be something fanciful and interesting, visually interesting looking, but not good for large bodies because it would strain your eyes. And then you'll have body text, which will be all the text that that's good for large amounts of text. Okay, so you try to repeat that text. You don't use different text all the time. You try to keep it the same. Helps keep association between them. Also, when you're reading something, whatever it might be, whatever you're doing in general, you're learning format. That way, when you go from one thing to another one, you don't have to relearn the format. It creates less cognitive strain, right? So if I make this page look like this, if I do the next page and it has the same format, I would have already understood it on this one. The next one will be easier now for me to read. So when you can repeat elements, it creates more harmony within them, and it makes it easier, especially if you have even separate pages, if you maintain that same style and maintain the same elements throughout. It just makes it a lot easier to digest. Composition is just a general rule or a general term to just describe the overall page layout, the overall page design. What do you think of this composition? Oh, I like this alignment. Oh, I like this. It's when we're talking about it as a whole piece. We'll talk about the composition, basically how the elements and such are laid out. Okay? All right. So you get hopefully a general idea. These are some rules. These aren't like the principles of design or elements of art. I think I talk about those later or earlier if you're taking this class after the other one. Anyway, but these are ones that are a little bit more relevant to, let's say, graphic design. Hope you get the idea. Now, what I want you to do is apply these. So here's your assignment. You're going to do a magazine ad. You're going to do 2 of them, okay? Now, you can do, so the idea is it's supposed to be advertising something. It can be advertising whatever you like. Could be perfume, could be clothing, could be a television program, a movie, whatever. But you need to be advertising something. So what you would typically see if you were to open up a magazine and be like, oh, here's a video game ad, right? Something like that. You have to make 2 of them. So you can do the same product, service, whatever, for both of them, but they need to be different. You could do 2 separate products, but they need to be 2 separate designs. I don't want to see the same design twice and you just move that over there. That's not doing anything, okay? So 2 magazine ads. You're going to do it in InDesign. All right. So just like the other class, you're gonna do the magazine ads, do 2 of them, and then you're also going to submit the project cover sheet. Okay, every time. There's a project cover sheet. Here's a video tutorial of me doing it. You can do it. So you can utilize this sort of as a guide. Here is the materials I used in order to complete this. So if you want to try this out. The assignment, however, needs to be your own thing. Don't turn in what I did. You should be doing your own. Now, the big thing, and I'm going to mention this in this video, in this tutorial video, when you are done, I'm going to reiterate, when you are done, you don't just go file, save the InDesign document, and submit that. I will not get the file. It'll be gobbledygook. What you need to do is you have to go to File, Package, you'll hit a couple of prompts, it'll package it, it'll make a folder with all the elements in it, plus a PDF, and then you will zip that package and send it to me. At the end of the video, I go over this. You need to do that. If you don't do that, you're going to get like a 0, okay? So you have to package your project. You can't just give me the InDesign file. That will not work. I need the package, all right? So that you're going to do the 2 ads. Then what you're going to do is, so we're on week 1, right? So here's the lecture we just did. Here's the magazine ads. Click on that. Click on this. Upload files, your package, your zipped package folder. And then you also need to do this discussion board, which doesn't have a description. So if I go to discussions, you'll see it here. Basically, what I want you to post is just a description of your work, what your general process was, things you liked, you didn't like about it, what you were going for. As well as your ads. If you can, please submit either a JPEG of them or the PDF of them. I don't really want the InDesign file just because it'll be hard for other people to look at it. And then make sure you respond to at least 2 of your peers, just like the other class. You will see there's a discussion board for each week, okay, minus the last week. All right, that is basically it. So if you run into any issues, if you're taking both classes, obviously you got kind of double duty here. I would maybe try to get one done in the first half, and then first half of the week, and then one done in the second half of the week. This will be due just like the other course. You have from today until Sunday night, before Monday morning, you have to get this material complete. I also do not have any of the weeks locked, so if you want to move ahead, go ahead and work ahead. All right. If you have any questions, just let me know. Otherwise, good luck.